Welcome to the Cherish and Conquer Podcast, the show dedicated to celebrating female entrepreneurs' strength, resilience, and innovation. Be inspired by stories of women and what they cherish to help them conquer against all odds. Every other week, you will learn from remarkable women on how they navigate challenges, uphold their values, and create sustainable success. And now, here's your host, Jim Rembach.
Hello and welcome to the Cherish and Conquer Podcast, and I have Judy Ryan with me, and we've already had some really good discussions that we're going to make sure that we bring into this conversation so you can, actually listen to it and or watch us. And before we get into all of that, I think it's important for Judy to share with us how she's actually making a difference in people's lives with the work that she is doing. So first of all, Judy, welcome, and then please share.
Thank you. Well, I'm such a passionate person around how people can really treat one another in a way that expands the potential of everyone, including in homes and schools and workplaces, because we're doing a lot of things that I don't think we're consciously aware of have a lot of negative side effects. So what I do is I go into workplaces and all kinds of different settings and help to transform the culture into one where there's shared power, where everyone is taught to be a leader, everyone takes personal responsibility for learning to manage relationships and their own engagement, their own productivity, and their own progress. So I hope that's kind of what you're looking for, Jim.
Well, and I also find it interesting. So tell us the name of your company. Okay. And how that came about.
Okay, well, the parent company is actually called Expanding Human Potential, which I love because that's what we're doing. But I wanted it to be LifeWorks Systems because unless we make systemic change, we will not necessarily have change that is adequate or consistent or scalable or sustainable. So that's why we have the company name is LifeWorks systems that make your life work.
Well, and we've always talked about work-life balance and all of these types of things. And I mean, to me, when I just even think about the name and then I associate it with your work and the conversations we've had, I'm like, yeah, it's just that fits.
Yeah, it's a little engineering kind of sounding in some ways, but I think there's a certain percentage of the population that loves to actually see where the gaps are and build the systems. And I'm in that percentage of people that do that. And the kind of systems I love to build are the ones that involve human systems so that people can get along with each other and know how to actually follow and fulfill their dreams. And I know that's one of the things you have in helping people overcome barriers and build dreams. And I would say that's what our work is about as well. Our purpose statement is to create a world in which all people love their lives. And we're very serious about doing that. And when we say create a world, we mean create the conditions and conversations where they can love their lives.
So, I mean, that's very powerful. And part of our off-mic discussion that we had that I want to make sure that we're bringing in is, you talked about feminine behaviors and environments and qualities and strengths. And I absolutely want to make sure that we talk about those things. But can you share a story and a time where embracing feminine qualities or strengths actually helped you to overcome a challenge in your own business?
Yeah, one of the things that happened to me when I had one of the biggest clients I've ever had, and I really adored working with her. I met her because she was over 1,200 people in a healthcare organization, and they had just been bought out by a big hospital system. So whenever there's a acquisition or a merger, it's very stressful. So some of their people came to a program of mine called Redirecting Negative Behavior, and they said, oh my God, this is exactly what we need. And so we ended up doing work with their executive team and then rolling out to them. They were one of our first customers to do our guided culture transformation process. And what happened was when we were doing our first project, it was going to be huge. It was with 15 facilities, which was bigger than anything we had done. And I noticed that she kept pushing the price down. And I noticed I wasn't loving my life about that. and I wasn't sure what to do. So I went to look at my value set, my core values, because if you don't have a value that serves that purpose, you want to find one. And so what I noticed was that the leadership core value that I have is that leadership to me is power within, not power over or power under. And I really, really liked this woman. She was a senior vice president of operations. And I went to her and I decided that helped guide me to helping approach her in a way where I wanted her to love her life. So I wasn't going to strong arm her about lowering the price. Well, I need this kind of money or else, and I also wasn't going to go, okay, I'll take whatever you give me, because then that's doing power under. So I went to her and I just really honestly said, I love working with you. I'm super excited about this project. I just have to tell you, though, I'm not sure what to do about this. I'm feeling a little discouraged about the way the price keeps getting pushed down. And I just want to have a conversation about it. I didn't even know where this would go, but I knew that I felt centered in the reality of who I am at my best. And she said, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't explain this to you. I'm using my entire discretionary budget for the whole year in order to do this project. And I want this to be as big as possible so that we can prove to corporate that this stuff works, so that we can get them to fund you the way you deserve to be funded. Like, we hadn't had that part of the conversation. So it was so valuable to me to realize that you can't go wrong when you come at something from the best of who you are, what helps you love your life, no matter what that outcome is. So that would be my story about that, Jim.
Well, I mean, thank you for sharing that. And you talked about something that we were discussing off mic, and you even brought in and talked about a book referred to as, or that you said was the Power Code, if that was correct. And
Yes.
correct me if I need to be corrected. And you talked about this power under, power over, power within, and how oftentimes, women are conditioned, to operate in a certain way or expected to operate in a certain way. And it doesn't help them find what their strengths are in regards to, being able to lead. And I think sharing that's important.
I would say men and women are conditioned for how to use power. And of course, not every woman and every man uses it the same way, but there are some pretty strong generalities. So a lot of organizations have been built on a lot of hierarchical, structures of power over, power under. And there's been a lot of control models used around that, even if they're subtle, like you're going to get written up is not so subtle, but maybe, I'll give you a bonus if you jump through this hoop over here. So there's a lot of ways that people feel that they're in this powerless position or powerful position. And what this book was about, it's written by Katty Kay, who's a BBC journalist, and her co-author is Claire Shipman, and it's called The Power Code. And they did an interview on why so many women are not in the C-suite positions in organizations. And part of it is that women typically, this is very generalized what I'm saying, because I don't think you and I have this, Jim. I think you're a very balanced masculine, feminine man, and I'm a very balanced masculine, feminine woman. And it sounds weird to say it that way, but it's like head and heart, analysis and relationships, all of it together. And so, but most women, they hold power as power within and power for and power shared and power between, so what is often the sort of conventional way of using power is power over, power under. And women typically do not like that. So they don't really want to go into that way of operating because it has that zero-sum game kind of feel about it. I also believe there's a lot of men that don't want to continue to do it that way. The problem with both is that both men and women have not really understood how do we create the dynamics that are win-win, shared power, personal responsibility on the part of everyone, and being able to clear barriers with each other instead of just try to get quick fixes with each other. So when women and men that want that find that way, it's like such a relief to them. But there's also an element in our world right now. You see it in the dictatorships around the world, and you see it even somewhat in our country right now, of trying to hold on to win-lose and power over with a death grip. And so it's a very tumultuous time, but I think that's the reason men and women do need to rise together in this new way of win-win. I met a woman one time. I spent like 5 hours with her. She was very high ranking in her company. And she told me she could see what she needed to do for the people below her. But when we talked about that, she said, I just don't know if I can do that, because she had been trained by a man that said, you got to like step on people to get to the top and, all of those things. And she had acquired this position of power and money, and she was afraid to let it go, to do the right thing that she wanted to do, because she would lose her status. And she was or she thought she would, she might not have, but she was so worried about holding on to that status that she had gained that she didn't do the thing that was actually true to her. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Want more insights from female entrepreneurs? Get complimentary access to Marina's Army for additional tips, tools, and tactics from this episode. Just go to Mirina.ai and click Community for access. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
And beyond belief, be honest with you, because even when you just describing me real quick, and I'm like, yes, I mean, so I am more of that, within type of person. Now, I can adapt to the other ways, and I could do it with ferocity,
Yes.
tenacity. I mean, I grew up with 3 brothers in the Chicagoland area. I can fight. I should say I can defend. I mean, I'm not an attacker, but don't attack me or people that I care about. You're going to
and that's true for most women, as far as like we have this mother bear energy about things, but that's not how we want the world to operate in general.
Right.
And I don't think we do either.
No. I mean, no, not at all. And quite frankly, I've, looking back upon, career path and all that stuff, not being able to, or not willing to play the, the over under game, what was a hindrance for me. It really was. It kept me from, moving to certain positions of greater responsibility. And, so I appreciate you sharing that, because it just absolutely resonated and connected. And even like you were, talking about, you have this type of, outlook, in a way that you process things. I mean, those things are critical for us to be able to know, what are the things that, can help me to thrive, and am I squashing those?
I think most people, if they knew the way through, they would be there in a heartbeat. Many people, I shouldn't say most people, because I can't tell. I mean, there's a lot more power hungry, domineering people in the world than I ever imagined, even in the United States. But it just tells me that people like you and people like me, we are actually evolving. The world is seeking to evolve in this direction. So what once was considered a deficit in you or me is not anymore. There's growing impetus for it, but most people don't know what to do to get themselves to the other side of that. There's a documentary on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Unlocked. Have you seen that? It's about a prison where they have the most serious offenders, murderers and rapists and everything. And they only get 1 hour a day out of their cell. And this one sheriff realized that they're not prepared to go back into society. They're so filled with discouragement and rage and all of that. So he's doing an experiment where he's unlocking their unit, all the doors, and taking all the deputies out. They still have cameras and everything on them. But they tell them, look, if you guys find a way to follow the rules together and create a community together and it stays safe, we'll let you out all the time. Like they can roam at night, or they can go out on the place where they could in the yard. And then they started to give them some more privileges, like we'll make the phones free. And at first there was a big feud over that, and then they found a way to work it through. And it's not a perfect thing at all. They had to take a couple people out that were just super destructive, but it's moving in the direction of shared power and personal responsibility. What I keep thinking as I'm watching is they need life work systems, because they're still trying to impose the old way of doing things. The older inmates start to try to be the power over, because even if they're doing it as gently as possible, it's very irksome to the younger inmates. And so, I just feel like that is the right direction. And he is smart enough, that sheriff, to realize that he's not preparing these men if he doesn't help them to learn how to collaborate and care about one another.
Well, even if, I think the whole conditioning piece is so difficult to get over. And one of the things that we were talking about off mic that I want us to explore a little bit more is that, hey, we've been conditioned to act and behave in this over-under. We know that doesn't fit well for us, and then therefore we escape that and start our own business and go into a smaller business and all of that. But yet we still carry some of that conditioning, and it prohibits us from having the success that we want to, experience. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think what happens is even when, like right now, I'm working with a client where there's core skills in the leadership team, and they are resisting the personal responsibility, some of them, of actually working out their differences the way that we're teaching them to, because there's a posture that we're taught to always be against one another, as opposed to coming together. Like we have this thing, Jim, where we talk about the stages of how to get to true community with somebody. And this is based on the work of M. Scott Peck, who wrote The Road Less Traveled. He wrote a book called The Different Drummer. And it was about how when we very first are in relationship with people, whether it's in a company, a home, family, neighborhood, at first we look for all the things we have in common and how much we like each other, right? That's kind of the honeymoon phase of all relationships. But what happens is that if people get afraid of noticing or acknowledging the differences, they start to be in what's called pseudo-community, where they just pretend everything's okay all the time. It's very fake. It's very people-pleasing, all of that kind of thing. And then what happens is at some point, if the differences are significant enough, they'll start power struggling, and they'll enter a stage called chaos, where it's I'm right, you're wrong. Let me show you how I know better than you do. I need to fix you, convert you, heal you, or change you. Oh no, I need to fix and convert and heal and change you. You know how well that goes, right? So we did that in the beginning of America with coming in and saying we had to save and heal and fix the Native Americans, because we thought we knew better. So that dynamic is very toxic. And what happens is most people start to separate emotionally, even if they don't leave a job or leave a marriage or whatever, or they go back into pseudo-community and go back and forth between power struggle and pseudo-community. So what most people don't really like doing, because it's kind of vulnerable, is they move into this stage called empty. And in the stage called empty, what you do is you empty yourself of the agenda you have for each other. It's not empty like bleak or, dreary or anything like that. It's like if I were to sit down with you and let's say we were vehemently opposed on political ideologies, but I was respectful to you, seeing you as having a right and to deserving of being considered worthy for yourself as your own individual, unique person that deserves to be respected and accepted for your own unique perspectives. If I'm willing to give you recognition for those perspectives and your gifts and your talents and how some of your differences could even be a real blessing that I can look at with appreciation, maybe not all of them, but some, I can acknowledge where there is. And if I am disclosing to you where I'm coming from, but not to try to change you or convert you. And if I am receptive to really hearing you, not just to combat you and prove you wrong, those are 4 of 8 values that build trust: receptivity, respect, recognition, and disclosure. And when people do that, they feel passive, like, well, why would I waste my time doing that? Well, if you don't, quote unquote, waste your time doing that, you're going to be at odds with each other. You're going to have unresolved issues with each other. And you won't be able to go to the place where you need to be fully honest, fully straightforward, fully seeking excellence, and fully following through on things, because there will be this part of us that is still resentfully complying with each other or rebelling and resisting against each other. So I'm not even sure if I'm answering what you're asking, but that's the part that people don't know how to do, or they don't want to do it because it opens them up. They think if I listen with recognition and receptivity that somehow you're going to change me and I can't let you do that. And the reality is, what if we do change each other, but it's not in a way that's invasive or controlling or dominating? It just helps us come to some kind of understanding.
Well, I mean, what you shared is extremely helpful, and that's the duality of what we're talking about. So if you could take it down to the self level. So think about, like I said, we've been conditioned over under, right? And so therefore we know that that's not where we want to be. We go to create a new space, new place. We start our own business. We, build a small business because we don't want to operate in the over under scenario, but yet we're still carrying those characteristics and those conditions with us, and it prohibits us from having success. How does the self overcome that?
Well, part of it is recognizing you're doing it. One of the stories I might have told you in the past, or we tell it all the time in conferences and everything, and I'll just tell you the beginning of it. A boy comes into a classroom meeting that I was sitting in on. This one teacher in a school was the only one doing our culture model out of her whole school. And so she was holding classroom meetings, sharing power with the students, helping them be critical thinkers and all of that. And into the classroom that I was sitting in, he says, I'm being bullied by my homeroom teacher. And she says, well, put it on the agenda. And when he says what his issue is, it's that there was this peace pledge that the school was adopting, where right after the Pledge of Allegiance, they were supposed to put their hands on their hearts and say, I pledge to use my words and actions for peace. And he said, I don't have a problem with that. The problem I have is the teacher shook her hand at us all and meant it and said, if I catch any of you not doing this peace pledge, you're going to get a detention. And he said, that's just wrong. So do you see how that's like a power within dynamic that's using a power over hammer to try to make them do it? And you're absolutely right. The conditioning says I have to get the compliance, not I believe I can inspire the cooperation. And that was, what was beautiful about it. Do you remember this story, Jim? Have I told you this story?
Yeah, I mean, you might have. I mean, and so for me, it's like I totally get what his feelings were in regards to that mixed message. And so if I'm thinking about me within an organization, I'm a female who knows that I have all of these over under things and I don't like that. I want to do the within. I go to start my own business. How do I keep myself from falling into the traps of over under behaviors and therefore I can't, overcome the barriers and build the dreams that I want because I'm so used to operating in those models.
Right. So that's why what I want you to see in this story is that it really requires social intelligence, emotional and social intelligence. What most people do is they're completely unaware of their own part in things. So just to carry this story forward, even if I've told it to you, it's a good way to answer this. The teacher knew when she invited me, she said, I know my job is to transfer responsibility to these students when they have a problem so that they can figure out how they want to fix it. And she said, sometimes I struggle with that. So when he said what he said, she looked at me and said, would you show me how you transfer responsibility in this situation? And I said, sure. And I said to the boy, do you want peace in the school? And he said, I do. And I said, do you want peace with the teacher who's bullying you? Because I wasn't going to say she wasn't. She was bullying him. Are you going to, do you want peace with her? And he said, yeah, I guess so. And I said, okay. Are you willing to look at where you're doing more with her? And he goes, me, I'm the one being bullied. He got really defensive. And I said, yes, of course, you are being bullied. But you're the one saying you want peace. You're intending peace. You're even intending peace with her who's bullying you. But she's not here asking for help. You are. So are you willing to consider if maybe you're doing more with her too? And he said, okay. And I said, do you ever say bad things about her behind her back? And he goes, well, yeah, I hate her. And I said, hate and gossip, anything warlike about that? And he's like, yeah, I guess. And I said, do you ever try to go to her when nobody's around and everything's peaceful and go there respectfully and just have a conversation with her? And he goes, well, no, we're all afraid of her. And I said, did you know that when you're afraid of somebody, you're an attack to them? And he goes, well, what do you mean? And I said, if a dog comes running up to you and it's barking and it's baring its teeth, if you get more afraid, will that dog get more hostile or less hostile? And he said, more hostile. And I said, yeah, why? And he said, I don't know. I never thought about it. And I said, the reason the dog gets more hostile is because when you're afraid of the dog senses that. And it picks it up as you have it in the enemy camp. And it's going to up the hostility because it's going to see this as adversarial. And that's what happens between human beings, whether we're conscious of it or not. And he goes, oh, wow, I never knew that. And I go, well, you probably hadn't been taught that. And I said, so now what do you want to do? You see that hate, gossip, and fear is you being out of alignment with your intention for peace. What do you want now? That's what it looks like to keep transferring it. Raise awareness and move it into action. And he said, well, now I'd like to go to her and try to work it out, but I'm not quite sure how to do it. And I said, well, isn't it great that you got another half hour and all these student friends and the teacher, and you even have me in the room? Why don't you ask people for the help? And he said, oh, that's a great idea. Well, this is the part that blew my mind, Jim. A couple of the kids piped up right away. I'll go with you. I've been doing more with her too, and I didn't know I was. And then the teacher said to me, you can see I'm a good teacher and that I love these kids, but at the end of the year, I want to leave this position and come work with you in what we were doing at that time was school reform. Because she said, we have all these signs in the school that say, accountability is important and, trust and respect. And she said, it's about as silly as saying math is crucial and having no math class. And we're not really preparing kids for the world. Now, that's a long answer, but what I want you to see is social awareness and emotional awareness is the awareness of, intelligence. It's the awareness, which we always say is the cupcakes at the party. It's the self-management and the relationship management that's the vegetables and fruits, right? We need all of it to be healthy, but most people are comfortable with just ruminating over what they're learning without necessarily knowing how to put it into practice in a way that doesn't blow up in their face to have the right support.
Yeah. So, that's like giving, if we don't do what you're just saying, it's kind of like giving the advice is just do better. What?
Yes. Yeah. What does that look like, right?
Just do better. What?
Yeah.
Okay. Because can you tell me about a story where embracing feminine qualities or strengths helped you to overcome a challenge in your business? I had this really big client that was the biggest client I've ever had. And it was the person I was working with was the senior vice president of operations in a big company. And the company had just been, as big as it had just been acquired by a bigger healthcare organization. And whenever there's an acquisition or a merger, there's all kinds of stress. And so her staff was really struggling with all of it. So she had sent some of her directors out to take some of our training, and they were like, oh my God, this is exactly what we need. So when we got to working with her executive team and she was like, this is exactly what we need. Let's go ahead and do a big project. So we were doing a big project with 15 of her facilities. I was so excited because I could tell she was all in and she wanted to, really give this a good start, but she kept pushing the pricing down. And it just was discouraging me. And one of the things that I'll tell you, Jim, is that our mission statement, our purpose, is to create a world in which all people love their lives. And all people includes me too, right? And I felt like I wasn't loving my life in this transaction as it was coming forward. And I realized that I wanted to go to my core values, because in our world, the core values are the servants of the purpose. So they must serve you in helping you get to that place of loving your life and helping the other person love their life. And one of the, I would call it a feminine quality. It's my definition of leadership. My definition of leadership is not power over, power under. It's power within, power between, power for, and power with. And that is, you could call it a feminine quality. I don't think it's limited to women. I believe you have a very strong ability to have that sort of mindset as well. And I've met some wonderful men that I work with that are like that. And I've met some women that are not like that. So it's a generalization, but this was helpful to me because I was able to go to my client who I really, really liked and say to her, I just really love working with you. And I'm super excited about this project. But I noticed that I'm not loving my life about the price.
Because what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to try to strong arm her. Well, I have to do it for this or I'm walking, or any of that stuff. It isn't even in me to do that. And I also didn't want to do that thing that some of women in particular do, power under more than power over. We're like, okay, pay me less than this other person. I'm okay with that, And I didn't want to do that because I knew I wouldn't feel in alignment with my best self. So I said to her, I don't know what to do. The price keeps going down. And she said to me, oh gosh, I'm so glad you brought this up. I'm using my entire year's discretionary budget on this because I want to prove to corporate how powerful this work is. And if we don't show a big enough example of it, they won't fund it the way it deserves to be funded. And so I was like, oh, good. She's not trying to lock me into these prices, And she said, I even want to introduce you to other departments in the United States that are my counterparts. Like she had all of this win-win with me, but she and I hadn't talked about it. So it was a really great example. Now the outcome was awesome, but even if it hadn't been, I would have felt in alignment with my best self. Even if I had gone to her and she said, well, we just got to get this price down no matter what, I might have had to say, well, you know what? I don't know that it's going to work for me. Why don't we figure out a different solution or something? Because I wouldn't have been coming at it from, I'm right, you're wrong. I got to convert you and fix you or let you convert me. Because sometimes that's just not an answer. It's not a good answer. So that's a story of where I would consider feminine qualities are that power within.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that and also giving us the different, aspects of, the different ways that leading and leadership can be applied and or affected,
Yes.
Because I think that also too, when we start looking at just overall human history, we have, tens of thousands of years of leadership and power taking and grasping. And I think I started reflecting upon all just the world turmoil. And it's like, it's still a bunch of guys trying to actually get power.
Well, what's interesting about saying we're fighting centuries? I was watching some documentaries on past cultures, and there have been certain periods in time, which were called the Golden Ages, where women are depicted on the walls of like pyramids and things, where they're right beside men and they're even slightly elevated above the men. Not real massively, but slightly, like as if they're honored for their value in the dynamic. And all of the work that's found around those kind of images are images of peace and prosperity and innovation. And then the Dark Ages comes again, and they try to destroy all the evidence of that. And then they try to suppress and oppress the feminine. And supposedly from this one documentary, we're in the place where we're shifting out of a dark age and trying to move into a golden age. That's why I'm so grateful that you're doing this work, Cherish and Conquer. I would like to think of conquer as conquer with the loving intention of unity, because that is the conquering women like to do. And I think good men like to do. But I just don't want to hold with the idea that we've never been able to do win-win, because we really have, according to some of the historical data. And we just need to learn from that, because when it goes into the Dark Ages, it's war and pestilence and all kinds of terrible things.
I tell you, this wealth of information you're sharing to me is like, oh my gosh. I'm trying to keep my ADHD from running wild. Because again, thank you so much.
Let it go. I think I might have a little bit of that. I don't know.
Oh, well, you just have such great stories and perspective. And I would just want to thank you again. So when you start talking about one of the things that I think you hit on this a little bit, and I think it's important, but I want to dig into it a little bit more, is, how do you ensure that your business practices align with your core values and ethics? So you shared in that one example, but how did you go about formulating that and making sure that you keep revisiting and you keep, in that essentially compliance box, so that you don't have scenarios that take you off and it's like, I'm not loving my life?
Yeah, well, one of the ways is like, for example, when I'm working in my business or I'm working in a client site, when we do what we call the immersive process, because people will not change behavior if they haven't been engaged with it in multiple ways. If they haven't learned it, reflected on it, written it, come together with a group of people where they have to teach it and take turns teaching it and really, hammer it out and then practice it and then have mentoring sessions with it. Like that's an immersive process. So when we work with companies, for example, every meeting is opened with purpose and core values. And every meeting and every mentoring session is opened with, right after appreciation for the person that you're mentoring, is here's why our purpose, here's what our purpose is, here's why it's important to me, and what is one way you could choose to do something to live in it in a deeper, more practical application kind of way. And then they read the core values and they say, which of these core values do you feel you need to amp up right now, or whatever they do with it. So when I watch folks, we encourage them to do things like a little video clip. Like somebody did one the other day on worthiness from Brene Brown. It was a 1-minute clip. It was fantastic. And that's one of the words in their purpose. They want everybody to feel appreciated, loved, included, and worthy. And so worthy was the word that person focused on and used that means. Because you know how when you say the Pledge of Allegiance, sometimes for people after a while, it's just like rote. They don't even think about what they're saying. So we encourage them to represent it in different ways so that it comes alive. It really makes them think. And that's what we do. So every day I'm thinking about, am I loving my life? Am I helping this person love their life? I'm loving my life right now because I love talking to you, Jim. Seriously, I was so excited when you invited me to this because I really do love this.
It's mutual, my I tell you.
Good.
Okay, so can you share a time, though, when you've had to pivot your business strategy? We talked about the conflict and the situation that had with that particular client, but that wasn't necessarily a business pivot. Can you share a time when you've actually had to do that?
Well, I feel like pivoting has to do with being agile, being able to shift. And the pandemic is a good example of that because I was doing a lot of public speaking and going to conferences and all of that. And what I did was I just started doing virtual summits and virtual, doing more programs like this, where I could basically share the same things. And right now we're doing that. We're doing events, even though we have a lot of online training, we're doing events. Like we've got one on gossip. I don't like to gossip, but it's the name of it. Why we gossip and what to do instead. And improving relationships. And we have one for our culture for people that are directors and above that want to look at culture. So we are always bringing things to people, even when we had the pandemic. But what was even more exciting to me is, Jim, do you know what Agile is all about?
Probably not not from your perspective, so I want to hear it. But Agile in the technical sense and being able to actually accomplish projects and stuff.
Yes. So I'll just say it for your audience. Agile is kind of like the word agile, where monkeys on a monkey bar, they're pivoting, they're moving and they're able to adjust. And that is what Agile, it initially was in software engineering, how to build software builds in an iterative, simultaneous way where people could test things every 2 weeks. But it required cross-discipline teams to collaborate and have trust and know when to jump in to lead and when to jump in to follow. Well, if they don't have any of those kind of skills, they don't know how to pivot, even within that model. And then that's being, that mindset is being applied to whole enterprises, but people aren't necessarily transformed to meet the needs of that type of agility. So what we heard was when the pandemic hit, we had customers that were, especially those in healthcare, and they had to pivot to, telehealth and all kinds of things. But they told me, they wrote us and said, because of the health of this culture, because of the dynamics between us, it was pretty effortless because we weren't additionally stressing at each other and hurting each other. And that's part of why Agile consultants and coaches come to us, because they know that the roadblock they hit is the people transformation and the culture. I hope that is not too wordy for your people listening, because it really is as simple as pivoting.
Well, I think, the process of the pivot, the whole recognition piece, I need to pivot, questioning whether or not I should pivot. And then when you start talking about the actual, process of pivot, and how many people are involved with it. I mean, it's talking about, a journey, talking about a transformative process. And I think when we start talking about transformation, I mean, it's a 4-letter word. Transformation. I want to avoid that at all costs, right? But the fact is that if we're not agile in regards to transformation in today's world, which talking about the acronym VUCA, it's volatile, uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous.
Yes.
You will go extinct.
Yes. And that's, VUCA is what people experience when there's mergers and acquisitions. But our world, because of the speed of change and the complexity and where technology is going and globalization and diversity and all of the political issues, it is VUCA more than normal. And so how we contain our own sense of purpose, how we live our core values, and how we know how to manage relationships, not only with ourselves, but with others, is absolutely critical. It's not a nice to have. Some people have always treated it as a nice to have. It's a need to have.
Well, we've never, this kind of goes back to the things that we've learned both at home and at school. It ain't this.
No, it ain't this. You are so right.
Enjoying the show? After joining Marina's Army, subscribe and share the Cherish and Conquer podcast on your favorite platform. Thank you. Now, back to the show.
Okay, so, oh my gosh. So Judy, we actually have to continue and move on to our next phase of our interview, and that's going to actually go through a rapid speed round called the Breakthrough Blitz. Okay. Needless to say, you've already helped us break through in a lot of different ways, but are you ready to help us blitz the rest of the way?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. What's your favorite productivity tool or app?
Oh my goodness. I should know. I don't know. I honestly don't know, Jim. I'm like drawing a blank. Productivity, I think it's just the fact that I'm designed to be so productive. That's the app. It's built in me. But speaking of apps, we want to build a 365-day app for the people that go through the culture process, because it is such a different way of operating. We want to have something prompt them every day with a concept and a tool, and house all of our tools in that app. To me, that is productive because it's keeping people aligned. It's keeping people in good health. As far as productivity, I mean, I use all the tools of productivity. Probably the one that I would like to use more is a process repository where all the ways we do things are captured and assigned roles, because I think that's so much easier when somebody leaves, to be able to hand off that process to them. And that makes everything so much more productive. So I would say that's probably my favorite.
I appreciate that. So what's your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
Oh my goodness. I would say reading. I love reading. I love reading books that are fun and mindless, and I love reading books that are psychological or business. I probably read, maybe 15 books a month at least. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. What if you could have dinner with any female business leader, living or deceased, who would it be?
I would say possibly Katty Kay and Claire Shipman, because they said in their interview that until we change culture, and they're influencers, I would love to have them pull together all the people that they know, and we could take what we've already built out to the world.
What's your favorite quote or mantra that keeps you motivated?
Oh gosh, I love quotes. Well, the mantra is really, the personal mantra for me is you don't have to be anybody but who you are. And that, you deserve to have people that know, love, and appreciate you. I have this thing on my refrigerator I read every day, because if we sell our power for love, it doesn't really work. So that mantra is true for me. But as far as quotes, one of my favorite quotes is the one by Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask, who am I to be talented, gorgeous, fabulous, successful? Who are you not to be? We're all children of God. And it's, and we, to shrink our light does not serve the world. There's more to it, but that really hits me because it helps me to choose my light and not run from my light. Because I do think people are afraid of that, Jim. I see it all the time where people don't want to own the fact that they have this beautiful power to do things, to be co-creating in the world, because it's been shamed in them. It's been judged in them. It's been told that it's suspect to have that power. And it's not, if you know how to bring it with loving intention.
I think appreciate you sharing that. And like I said, I've learned just as much about myself on during our time together here. And that feeling of shame for being me is something that I've been battling with my entire life. So thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, here's a really good book for you, Jim. It's called You're Not Broken. And it very much aligns with the Adlerian psychology we use. It helped me go deeper and deeper, because what you're going to learn if you read that book is that our unconscious, which is what we decided when we were really little to keep ourselves safe, and how we interpreted what we thought it meant about us, and our identity, which is our self-conscious, where we think, okay, I'm a woman, I'm a this, I'm a that, and we're so mired to that. Those are two parts of us that keep us feeling the feeling you just had there. And so when we realize that we have this other part of us, it's like a supercomputer inside of us. I think of it as God inside of us. It's called the superconscious. And when we know that that's there, we can ask the superconscious to recode the unconscious and to install a new program. I like to think of it as a computer. If you had whatever that 512K that was originally out, years ago, and you said, that's the way to go, and you never allowed it to be upgraded, it would be pretty non-helpful, right? Those early computers. But if you have somebody that says, look, I can bring in a whole new set of functionality and put it into your system, and I can clear out all the viruses, and I can make your computer so that it is now serving who you actually are. That's what we all need to do personally. So I'll send you the thing that I have on my refrigerator, because I read it every day. And absolutely. It helps me so much.
I mean, to me, as you were talking about it, it's like, well, that's kind of an affirmation. I mean, it's, something that you have to do from a conditioning and a code rewiring perspective. And you're right. So thanks for the clarity, and thanks for the share. Okay. So here's, and one more, I got two more questions for you. What is one piece of advice that you would give to aspiring female entrepreneurs?
I would say align with your heart. Allow yourself to be intellectual, smart, driven, but allow yourself to know what really matters to you and not lose sight of it. Like, that's what purpose does for me. When I'm having a low moment, if I look up toward, oh, wait a minute, am I not loving my life? What do I need to do? I might need to go for a walk. I might need to call a friend. I might, and maybe I'm loving my life, but a friend of mine isn't, and I can help that person. So I would tell women, do not lose sight of who you are at your best, because that's all our purpose is. It's who we are at our best and what we cause from that. So that's what I would tell women. And I would tell anybody, practice compassion and patience and reassurance with yourself over everything. Because we all make mistakes, and we're so hard on ourselves because we've been bought into punishment, or shaming, and it's just stupid.
I appreciate you. Okay, so here's my last Breakthrough Blitz question. And we definitely expanded on some of those blitzing questions, but I think it was well worth it. Okay, so what's the biggest misconception people have about being a female entrepreneur, and how do you address it in your own experience?
I don't know if this is exclusive to female entrepreneurs, but I know that the work that I'm doing it is most effective when I am vulnerable and sharing and walking the talk myself. And a lot of people think professional is separate from being human. And I had a customer the other day that was supposed to be leading a small group, and I was prepping her. And one of the tools is called the frustration tool. I don't like it when you state a behavior because this is what I desire. And then, so what I want is, and are you willing? That's kind of this tool. And she goes, I go, what's a frustration you have? And we'll practice. And she goes, well, I'm frustrated that I'm in this stupid prep session. You know, she's a real rebellious one. And I said, okay, I'll demonstrate it. I don't like it when you come to this prep impatient and resentful, because I want to feel the respect and the recognition and for you to be in this with me and to work for both of us being successful in this. So what I want is for you to put aside your impatience right now and decide to be all in. Are you willing? Now, that's not easy to do to a customer that's paying you or part of the team that's paying you, but I can't sell the ideas to people if I'm not willing to walk the talk. As scary as it can be sometimes, as upsetting as it can be sometimes, that's what I think women need to do, is be their authentic self more than they think is even supposed to happen. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Judy Ryan, how do our listeners and watchers get in touch with you?
Well, we just have launched a brand new website. It's full of resources. You can click on a category and get to just about 1 million articles and testimonials and all kinds of stuff. And it's at lifeworksystems.com. Life is singular, work is singular, and systems is plural.com. And if anybody wants to reach me, they can put Judy in front of that. And if you want to just reach our support team, you can put info in front of that.
Judy Ryan, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you, Jim. You too.
Thanks for tuning into the Cherish and Conquer podcast from Marina. Join our community of trailblazing women at community.marina.ai and get access to exclusive resources, checklists, and guides. If you found value in today's episode, please rate, review, subscribe, and share it across your social platforms. See you soon, and remember, barriers are for breaking.